Being a child and a teenager sucks. You're completely dependent on others with little to no value put on your own input or desire. You have to go to school, you have to do your homework, you have to do your chores, you have to do your best to blend in to avoid any mocking from your peers, all the while wishing you'd stand out. It's a tough old ride.
I'm hot, and you're not. But if you want to hang with me, I'll give it one shot, top that.
The one solace for me during this time was the weekend. I was finally free for 2 days from all the nonsense that was dictated to me during the week. I could sleep in, hang out with friends, play drums, ignore my homework, and of course, spend countless hours playing video games. You see, video games were my ultimate escape from the daily grind of growing up, and my local Xtravision was my place of worship. It wasn't the biggest shop around, but it was the only place that rented or sold video games in my small rural town. Every Friday after school for years, I'd go straight there after getting off the school bus, armed with a fiver that I'd spent the whole week earning doing chores. As soon as I opened the door, I was awash with seemingly endless possibilities, the shelves packed with new and old games just waiting to be played. Unlike modern day conveniences, I was left with only my own intuition on what might be worth that crumpled up fiver in my pocket. There was no algorithm dictating to me what I would like, the concept of Metacritic wasn't on my mind, nor was the wealth of knowledge the internet provides in the palm of my hand. I was untethered and unburdened from the hype, expectation and negativity that seems intertwined with modern day gaming. I would spend far too much time perusing through each game, reading its box over and over before making that all-important decision on what to rent. It took even longer to decide if a friend was sleeping over at my house that weekend, and we had to come to a consensus on which game would be best suited for 2 players. The guy who worked there, Michael, was absolutely no help whatsoever the few times I asked him what he'd recommend. In fact, he'd often give me a look that made his face look like a slapped arse if I even appeared to be thinking of asking him anything. This was a direct contrast to the wonderful gaming sensei my cousin had access to in the Xtravision in Belfast. That sensei's name was Luke, a gregarious, badass punk rocker who made it his mission to cherry pick only the finest games his store had to offer. To say I was jealous of my cousin's rental experience in comparison to mine would be an understatement. Anyway, looking back, the whole concept of renting a game and returning it a few days later is almost ridiculous. But for a consumer, or in my case a broke, bored teenager, it was a low-cost, risk-free way to broaden horizons. There were so many games and series that I discovered and loved purely because of that Xtravision. Hitman, Splinter Cell, Beyond Good and Evil, Destroy All Humans, Psychonauts, Okami, God of War. All games I wouldn't have dared to waste my precious 2 games a year tokens on. One token for Christmas, another for my birthday. But they all became games that I would eventually buy down the line to experience all over again, pick up where I left off, or simply to add to my little collection. On the flip side, however, I also got to experience some of the worst games imaginable, the sort of games that would make my PlayStation weep and Michael smile as he took that precious fiver from my hands and gave me a hunk of shite in return. Some memorably terrible games would be Trigger Man, a game with legitimately the worst stealth mechanics I've ever had the displeasure of experiencing, on top of some of the most outrageously idiotic AI I've ever had the pleasure of witnessing. It's a classic tale of an admittedly cool cover catching my eye and stealing my money. Another one worth noting is Bad Boys Miami Takedown. This game was a rental that I thought would help tide over the tortuous wait for San Andreas back in 2004, which was penciled in for release later in the year. Side note, San Andreas was actually the first game I bought on release day. Who knew? Anyway, Bad Boys Miami Takedown was not the GTA substitute I was expecting. Hell, it wasn't even the movie tie-in game I was expecting. At the very least, I expected the main cast to be lending their voices to the action, but what I got was some of the most hilariously awful and jarring voice acting in gaming history.
You're lucky they didn't get you too. I've never seen you in this precinct before. You just get transferred here?
What's your name?
Leanne Reed. Been a while.
Marcus Burnett. Figured I'd run into you sooner or later.
Yeah, well, I don't tend to run away from my past. I stay and deal with things.
Damn, there's a whole other thing going on here.
By the way, just in case you didn't know, that's not Will Smith. On top of that, Will Smith and Martin Lawrence didn't even lend their damn likeness to the project. How this can even be labelled as a Bad Boys game when its main characters bear no resemblance whatsoever to the movie's characters surely dances on the line of what can legally be considered a movie tie-in game. There are many more games that burnt me throughout the years I spent in that wonderful little Xtravision. At the time, I would often be miserable whenever I picked up a dud. A week of chores gone down the drain, a weekend all but spoiled. But nowadays I can safely say I'm glad I experienced the worst games had to offer. It made me appreciate the good games all the more whenever I stumbled across them, and sometimes you really have to go through shit to truly enjoy the smell of roses.
That is one big pile of shit.
The most startling thing about looking back on those days is to envisage myself as being so ignorant, so uninformed, and so damn open to literally any game cover that captured my eye. As I said earlier in the video, I was completely free to make all the decisions and mistakes, no one else to blame or rely on but myself. For every Trigger Man or Bad Boys I picked up, I still went back the following Friday filled with the same optimism and excitement as if all the games on the shelves were once again packed with potential for greatness. I miss that side of myself. I miss not being bombarded with news about every single game. I miss not researching every game and letting its arbitrarily applied review score subconsciously dictate my purchasing decisions. I even miss browsing through the aisles to the tune of Michael's surprisingly great taste in music. Financially speaking, I also miss the level playing field that the rental market provided for customers. The industry and its games are becoming ever more fragmented between an ever-increasing amount of online storefronts. I can't even keep up with all of them anymore, if I'm being truly honest. But in that Xtravision, every single game from every single developer was on display, and each title was given the same price and filled up one joyous, singular space. And even with the advent of eBay, Steam, the Epic Store, the PlayStation Store, Xbox Live, and the multitude of other places to buy video games online, nothing has come close to the consistent value of renting in regards to one very important factor. There still isn't a cheaper way to experience the newest games on the market. Sure, games routinely drop down in price within the first 6 months of their life nowadays, but back then the biggest titles would be available for a weekend rental on release day for a mere $5, and sometimes a weekend rental was more than sufficient to see a game through to its end, particularly shorter single player games. It was a simpler time in that sense. I wouldn't have a hope of finishing a game in 48 hours anymore, as games have gotten much longer and the free time available in my life has gotten much shorter. Everything about the mechanics of buying video games and consuming media has become so convenient in the time since Michael served as the gatekeeper for my formative gaming experiences. Streaming, Steam sales, and the decreasing presence of physical media has all but eradicated the possibility of anything like Xtravision becoming such a mainstay in society again. We simply don't need to leave our own homes to purchase entertainment, or rely purely on our own instincts or friends' recommendations when it comes to which entertainment is worth our time. A simple Google search is now sufficient. I mean, it's handy, but something about it feels even colder than Michael's death glare. I don't yearn for a return to the old days per se, but when I reflect on how I used to discover the things I loved, I can't help but smile. It was just an adventure. Every trip to the shop made finding something great feel earned, like I had discovered buried treasure. Every weekend was just me and a new game. No preconceptions, no expectations, no strings attached. Only the simple activity of discovery. I miss that. I miss that childlike wonder. I even miss Michael, even if he looked at me like I was an irritating thorn in his side. I have no idea where that man is now, but I guess on behalf of my younger self, I want to thank him. I want to thank him for never taking the age rating of games into consideration with anything I rented, when by all accounts he really should have. I want to thank him for giving me that one-time pass and a late return fee. And I want to thank him for providing me the ship on which I set out on many adventures on. Thanks for watching.